Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Helen Dunkel. I'm a Special Agent and Public Information Officer with the Bureau of ATF. I want to thank you for taking time from your day to attend our press conference for Operation Gideon 4. We're going to have 4 speakers today, and U.S. Attorney Benjamin Wagner will be introducing our speakers, and when they're concluded, we will have a question and answering session. So I'd like to introduce to you Benjamin Wagner, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern Judicial District of California.
Thank you, Helen. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. My name is Benjamin Wagner. I'm the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of California. I want to start by thanking Chief Eric Jones for having us here today. There you are. Thank you. Thank you, Chief Jones, for hosting us here today. I'm joined today by Chief Jones of the Stockton Police Department, by Joseph Reel, who is the Special Agent in charge of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, by Jim Willett, who's the District Attorney of San Joaquin County, by Steve Moore, the San Joaquin County Sheriff, by Galen Carroll, who is the Modesto Police Chief, and by Rob Patrick, the Stockton Area Commander for the California Highway Patrol. We are here this afternoon to announce the results of Operation Gideon 4, an anti-violent crime initiative involving a partnership between federal, state, and local law enforcement aimed at targeting the most dangerous and violent offenders in Stockton and the surrounding areas. Last year, the city of Stockton had a record number of homicides. This year, the Stockton Police Department sought the help of federal law enforcement, and we were eager to provide it. Operation Gideon 4, an ATF-led operation focused on violent offenders, was the result. Several months ago, ATF special agents began working with the Stockton Police Department to identify potential targets of investigation, to examine undercover options, to develop leads, to analyze intelligence, and to deconflict. This was followed by a surge of ATF special agents who were brought into this region to work together with the Stockton Police Department and other law enforcement agencies in the region to implement this Operation Gideon 4. The operation was intelligence-driven, beginning with the identification of areas in the city of Stockton where there were significant firearms-related violence, sizable crime gun recoveries, or repeated shooting incidents. Agents then targeted individuals who were associated with violence and posed a continuing danger to the community. The operation contemplates swift prosecution of those arrested in the course of the operation, and prosecutors with my office and with the District Attorney's Office have been involved with this operation since it began. To date, this operation has resulted in felony federal charges against 44 defendants. They are charged with a variety of firearms, narcotics, and robbery offenses. 8 prosecutors in my office and one federal prosecutor from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Alaska are prosecuting these cases. If convicted, the defendants in these cases are facing substantial time in prison. At least 11 additional individuals have been charged with criminal offenses by the District Attorney's Office. And to date, as part of this operation, 84 firearms have been seized, including 6 machine guns, 4 short-barreled rifles, and 2 silencers. Approximately 36 pounds of methamphetamine, 21 pounds of marijuana, and significant amounts of heroin and crack cocaine were also recovered. Chief Jones and his department and District Attorney Willett and his office have worked closely with ATF agents and with my office over the past several months as part of the initiative that we are concluding today. Several of the cases that arose out of this operation also involved the San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office, the California Highway Patrol, the Modesto Police Department, and I want to thank all of the men and women with those law enforcement agencies who work so diligently and so seamlessly together with ATF and with my office as part of this effort. The U.S. Marshal Service, the Lodi Police Department, and IRS Criminal Investigations Special Agents also participated in some of the cases that were taken down as part of this operation. It has been a tremendous partnership, and we are not done. Several investigations are still underway, and I anticipate that there will be federal arrests in the near future that arise out of this operation. These enforcement actions are being undertaken in support of the City of Stockton's ceasefire partnership. Ceasefire is a continuing, community-based effort to communicate directly with gang members in Stockton. It involves offers of assistance and support to those who are prepared to renounce violence, but to those who continue to engage in violence, it promises swift and severe justice. Many of the defendants in these Gideon cases are associated with violent street gangs in Stockton and the surrounding area. Many of them have lengthy criminal histories. We are using federal resources to arrest and prosecute them, and many of them will be going away for long periods of time to federal prisons that are located a long way away from the city of Stockton. Violent gangs and their members should be aware that future violence will be met with similar enforcement and prosecution efforts. I want to thank my law enforcement partners, and particularly ATF Special Agent in charge, Joseph Reel. And I also want to thank my friend Todd Jones, the National Director of ATF, who could not be present today, but I communicated with him as recently as yesterday about this initiative, and he was a strong supporter of it and of the collective effort that was made here in Stockton. Finally, I want to thank the Assistant U.S. Attorneys in my office, particularly Jason Hitt from the Sacramento office, and also Kim Sanchez from the Fresno office for their diligent work in this operation. And I will now call on Chief Jones to come to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. As you know, Stockton has been plagued by violent crime, and that is why it has been our #1 focus to address gang activity, illegal firearms, and violent offenders. In 2012, I asked Attorney General Eric Holder for some federal assistance here in the city of Stockton to help us address our violent crime issue. And I specifically cited our homicide numbers, our record-breaking homicide numbers, and simultaneously ATF officials reached out to me and notified me that according to their statistics, Stockton had been selected as one of the candidates for Gideon 4. A national operation and the 4th of its kind. And so I quickly agreed to it. The plans began, and I couldn't be more pleased. I want to thank my federal partners in this endeavor. I want to thank all of the local partners that helped out as well. The mission of this operation was to bring federal resources federal assistance down to the local level for a community-wide problem, a serious community problem with violence. As a police department and as a law enforcement partnership, we recognize the community's desire to reduce violence in our community, and that is again why it has been our #1 priority. Gideon 4 was undertaken in support of Operation Ceasefire, which is not just a philosophy but a way of doing business here in Stockton, which is to absolutely say that the violence is intolerable and we will bring the full law enforcement gamut down upon those who continue to commit the violence. This means that violence will always be met with this kind of enforcement action, this type of response, which is federal and local agencies working together to target violent offenders and violent groups with very serious charges and serious time. Stockton Ceasefire means we're committed to breaking the cycle of both arrest and incarceration, and we're here to support those who want to step away from their violent lifestyles. However, let there be no mistake that we will respond very swiftly to violence. We will respond as a law enforcement entity swiftly, certainly, and with all resources available at our disposal. Potentially violent gang members, gang groups, and other groups need to be aware of the operation and the consequences of today, because this is not just a one-time operation. There will be ongoing operations and ongoing efforts. We believe this mission was an absolute success, and the reason I believe it is a success are really 2 reasons. The first one is the amount of offenders that were incarcerated and are up for federal prosecution, again for serious charges and serious time, and the amount of weapons and other paraphernalia that was confiscated. There's no doubt that some very violent acts were thwarted. The second reason I think this was a success is because we have seen reductions in our violence here in Stockton, both with our homicides down about 50% year to date, and overall violence down about 15%. So thank you, ATF, for coming here to Stockton. I want to also thank District Attorney Jim Willett, Sheriff Steve Moore for your ongoing effort, California Highway Patrol Commander Rob Patrick. I also want to thank for the ongoing help we get from probation and from parole and our other partners. But I want to specifically thank those agents who are out there working, getting this work done, an often very dangerous situation for the betterment of our community. And I want to specifically thank our 2 police officers assigned to that task force. Again, They're giving their hard work for this community, the betterment of the community, and the ongoing safety of this community. Together, we are very strong in our fight on crime. I'd now like to introduce from ATF, Joseph Reel.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon. Violent crime in Stockton has met its new nemesis, and the adversary has been identified as ATF's Frontline. Frontline is a new business model for ATF which uses intelligence-driven initiatives that focus on targeted enforcement areas, much like we did here in the city of Stockton and the surrounding area. In this case, the ATF San Francisco Field Division established violent crime priorities to strategically direct our limited resources toward positive impacts on violent crime. One of the tactics we settled on was to redirect several resources from around the country to provide a capability to target violent offenders who use firearms to commit acts of violence. A surge such as this provides enhanced strategic and tactical support tailored to address the identified violent crime problem as a framework to sustain comprehensive, integrated, and intelligence-driven enforcement efforts. For the past 4 months, ATF has complemented our existing business model, Frontline, with Operation Gideon 4. And we have unleashed our expertise by bringing those personnel into the area to take action. Based on the assessments, we took this approach, and after making contact with Chief Jones, we launched our Frontline initiative. As you've heard, Gideon 4 is an ATF-led, multi-layered initiative that focuses on violent criminals using sophisticated undercover enforcement operations made up of seasoned special agents who are brought into Stockton to target and remove the violent criminals from this community. Those crews that we looked to remove were violent career criminals, people who conduct robberies, and gang members who were responsible for numerous shootings and other acts of violence in and around the city of Stockton. Our concentrated efforts have been to ferret out the worst of the worst violent offenders. Robbery crews and some of the other most violent criminals on our streets are what we look to do. These are small groups of offenders who are intentionally arming themselves and going out and committing robberies. They enter expecting to meet resistance. They're prepared with firepower, as you can see on the table in front of you, that they're here and they're serious about the business that they conduct. Too often, these criminals are also responsible for the death of innocent bystanders. We strategically saturated criminal-infested areas to identify, arrest, and perfect criminal cases in an effort to remove these offenders from our streets and put them behind bars. This operation used existing ATF resources along with the officers from the Stockton Police Department, the California Highway Patrol, and other law enforcement agencies in the region. Gideon 4 conducted more than 223 enforcement actions, such as search warrants and arrest warrants, and seized more than 84 firearms, of which you heard were machine guns, short-barreled shotguns, and even 2 silencers. These firearms were seized from criminals who unlawfully and dangerously possessed them. In addition, numerous pounds of various unlawful drugs were seized. The cumulative number of prior arrests for these defendants that you heard of, the 44 and the 11 in state court, had a total of 459 arrests, of which 98 of those were felony convictions. So you could see that we did this through our targeting package to make sure we are going after the worst of the worst. This operation will have a lasting impact on public safety because of the great partnership we created with the Stockton Police Department and other law enforcement agencies in the communities in the Central Valley, such as you see here, as well as the U.S. Attorney's Office and the District Attorney's Office. All of us have a mutual vested interest in the quality of life here, in and around Stockton and in the Central Valley. With the support of the United States Attorney Ben Wagner, his staff, Chief Jones and his force, and District Attorney Jim Willett, we were able to remove some of the most violent career criminals from the streets of Stockton and have shown them the inside of a federal jail cell. I would like to thank, in addition, the U.S. Marshals, CHP, the California Highway Patrol, Modesto, and Lodi Police Departments for their support as well. I would also like to publicly thank our men and women from ATF who have come from all over the country to unite with our local law enforcement and state agency partners to work as a force multiplier to address this violent crime. As the United States Attorney has pointed out, this is not the end. Part of our frontline strategy is it's a three-pronged approach. One is, of course, law enforcement actions, but in addition to that, we have community involvement and the sustainability. As you've heard from United States Attorney Wagner and from Chief Jones, that's a key component to the success of reducing the violence in this community, is sustainability. And we're committed as an organization to work collectively together. The reason you see the people here is because no one organization is going to be able to be successful on their own. It's going to take the integration and cooperation of federal, state, and local law enforcement and prosecutors to have the impact that we're striving to have in regards to the violence. The sustainable portion of Frontline is important, and we have to focus on that. We need community leaders to work with gang members and to help stop the violence. ATF and our partners will continue to do our job and keep continued enforcement efforts going as long as they're necessary. Again, I want to thank everybody for their support. I particularly want to thank the leadership in this particular case, our Assistant Special Agent in Charge, John Cooper, our Resident Agent in Charge, Ernie Diaz, and our branch chief from ATF headquarters, Frank DeLisio, who are here helping to lead the day-to-day operations of these enforcement actions that we took over the last 4 months. Thank you.
And now I'd like to call on the District Attorney, Jim Willett. Thank you, Jim.
I'll be very brief. As you heard, thanks go to our local law enforcement partners, the Sheriff's Office under Sheriff Steve Moore, the Probation Department with Chief Probation Officer Stephanie James, Modesto Police Department got involved, the Highway Patrol got involved, but I really want to give the biggest thanks to to our federal law enforcement partners on this. The gangs and gun problem in San Joaquin County, and particularly in the city of Stockton, was intolerable. And when it reached the level that Chief Jones reached out, the federal government stepped up to the plate, and ATF and the United States Attorney deserve a tremendous amount of thanks. This operation, as you heard, is kind of a precursor to what will be ongoing, if necessary, in the ceasefire operations. And as you see from the cache of weapons and drugs, it was very successful, and I think bodes well for ceasefire success. So again, thank you to our federal partners on this.
Thank you, Jim. I'd be happy to take any questions. Yes, ma'am.
I think this question is for Special Agent Rio. You talked about some sophisticated undercover operations. Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
I won't get into the techniques we use, but the whole purpose is to allow our undercovers to infiltrate criminals and their organizations to see if, in fact, they are committing acts of violence, and then how we can determine exactly what they're doing in an effort to perfect cases. So it is a tool that we have used successfully over the years. We have some of the best undercover operatives out there dealing with violent criminals who know how to establish the elements of the crime in effort to present them to the U.S. Attorney's Office. So that is one of the main tools that we used in this particular operation with a great deal of success.
So this is safe that if we say that your agents actually went and had some kind of relationship with this criminal before?
It's safe to say that they did interact quite often with the criminal element in an effort to engage them to see if, in fact, they were committing crimes, yes.
The agents were involved as far as an operation?
With this operation, we had over 20 personnel assigned just to this operation from our own organization. That does not include the other assets from the other organizations that were engaged as well.
Joe, what did you learn about the criminal element here in Stockton?
There's a lot of violent criminals in the area. You know, one of the things we talked about when we did our analysis was because of the interstate connectivity north, south, east, west. This happens to be a hub where a lot of them seem to settle to conduct a lot of transactions and movement of illegal products and activity. You know, as I said, when we looked at the criminals themselves, we're looking for people who are prone to use firearms, not just carry firearms, but actually use firearms as well, who are doing a lot of the shootings, who are doing a lot of the homicides. And that's what we'll continue to do with it in this case.
You said you had career criminals. Were any of these AB 109?
Let me address that generally. Our guidelines really don't let us get into the particulars of the criminal backgrounds of particular individuals, but I will say that the defendants that were targeted, that were charged in this case, were targeted in large part because of their criminal history. So as Joe Reel just indicated, really what this operation was all about was combining local intelligence about the criminal element here in Stockton with federal capabilities. And there was a long ramp-up period to this where there was federal agents and state and local agents working side by side to figure out who are the people that were responsible for violent crimes in this area, how can we make contact with them, how can we deploy federal resources in an effective way. And generally the people that we were looking at were people that had a demonstrated sort of history of violent crime.
So you ran into these people in the past?
Many of them, as Joe indicated earlier, many of them have quite extensive criminal histories, yes.
Joe, could you elaborate on the use of the highway systems here, where these people are coming from and what they're doing when they get here?
Well, yeah, I mean, you have a lot of gang structures that have developed over the years that, again, because of the movement of narcotics from, you know, the Mexican border region headed north and then out towards the east, again, it seems to be an area where we found a lot of activity involving not only just gun arrest, but drug activity, and then again, the use of firearms in those drug transactions or couriers and things of that nature that we were looking to target. You know, when you look statistically, that's the other thing we did. We looked at unified crime reports on a national scope, looking in our area in both the Eastern District and Northern District of California. As you heard, we did an operation similar to this in Oakland just last year. Again, so we're looking at areas where we have those areas where people can't go outside because of shootings or robberies, and one of the goals is to try to identify those individuals who are doing a lot of that so that we can eliminate that from the community and then move forward. So the networks, of course, because of the highways, we found this historically across the country where you have network systems much like that intersect here. There's just people have an opportunity to set up shop here because it gives them a hub to operate out of.
For gun and drug trafficking?
That's correct.
Bay Area, Southern California, where are they?
Southern California, Bay Area, headed north towards you know, the northern border of California, as far east as the East Coast.
You've got a big collection of guns. Where did they come from? Stolen? Right.
A variety of guns, it varies. You know, what we try to do is look at that and determine where the guns are coming from. Some come from burglaries, whether they're residential. We've had a series across the country. You'll see trends where we've seen gun dealers that have been burglarized, guns showing up that way. You will have people who will buy guns in an effort to try to make profit on those, who will take the guns from the legal sources, buying them at gun dealers, and divert them over to the illegal sources, to those prohibited. And that's what, you know, some of these end up being.
Chief Jones, can you tell us what the ATF brought to the table in this operation?
Well, for starters, they brought a lot of resources, but the way they blended together with our existing resources, our officers working with their agents, for me was quite unprecedented because they brought a lot to the table, and again, able to infiltrate some groups we might not have otherwise been able to do. We do hope the ongoing ATF task force is able to keep that sustainability that ATF mentioned earlier. So, and I see that happening. I do hope there will be further operations. To what scale, to what size, how often, we of course won't say, but this definitely is not the end. This is part of how we do business now.
Is there an agreement in place to continue this?
We have an agreement for our ATF task force that we do work with on a regular basis year-round. with prosecution, that I will leave to the U.S. Attorney Ben Wagner.
Thank you, Chief. One of the points that I think is worth making here is that part of the value of the federal involvement is what happens next. Because with federal prosecution, as you all know, because of AB 109, because of court decisions, because of budgetary restrictions, there are real restrictions on both the county jails and the state prison system. We have those problems also on the federal side, but people who are convicted in federal court are going to federal prisons, and there's two values to that, I think. One is there's no early release in the federal system. If you're convicted in the federal system, you're going to serve at least 85% of the time by law is the minimum amount of time you can serve of the sentences that are imposed. And those that are convicted of narcotics crimes or carrying a firearm in furtherance of a narcotics crime, those are minimum mandatory penalties. They can be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, depending on the offense. But so those are very significant sentences that are going to take people out of circulation for a long period of time. The second thing is people, as I mentioned in my prepared remarks, these defendants are going to be dispersed and sent to prisons all over the country. They're not going to be here where they're going to be communicating or calling shots from the inside or talking to their fellow gang members, who are just outside the wall. These people may be, if and when they're convicted, may wind up in New Hampshire, in Kansas, in Texas, what have you. So I think there's a long-term kind of salutary effect to bringing the federal justice system into play here. In terms of going forward, I want to join what the Chief said about our continued commitment to Stockton. My office is right up the road. I have prosecutors who live here. We have a lot of prosecutors who work on Stockton cases. We have for years. We've got a very good relationship with the sheriff, with the chief, and with the district attorney. And we're not going away. ATF is not going away. And we have a long and good history of working here. We're very committed to ceasefire, not only in this city but in some other cities in the Valley. It has shown a lot of promise for reducing violent crime over the long term, and so part of keeping at that, as was mentioned, you have to have community involvement. You have to have sort of the carrot, the direct communication with gang members, and the hand that we offer to them. But that also has to be accompanied with the stick, and that's where we come in, and we intend to play that role for a long time to come.
Where are these defendants now? I mean, are they in prison? Are they halfway through their legal process? Or?
It's at all sort of different stages, because this was not something where we sort of did a roundup all at one time. We were arresting people throughout the operation and being relatively quiet about it and waiting till we were largely complete. There are still a few cases, as I mentioned, that are out there that are still going to be arrested, defendants who are going to be arrested in the future. But so they're at various stages. Some people have just been arrested over the last few days. We have a couple of fugitives out there that we're still looking for, and a number of them have now been arraigned already in federal court and are, on their way to trial dates and so forth.
But it's been reported that some of these criminals were recruited to commit crimes and then arrested instead. Does that complicate prosecution?
No.
Gladly not.
No.
Time for one more question.
Going. Nope. Okay, gone. Thank you.
I want to thank you for attending. This concludes the press conference. My SAC will be available for any sidebars as well as others back here.